Is it fine?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear, Pushkar.
Perfect. It usually takes a couple of minutes for it to stream on LinkedIn. So we'll just wait. In case anyone over here you can't hear us well, please put it down in comments. It's always good to know if the software is working fine or not. And welcome, Sandeep. Pleasure to have you again. How are you?
Thanks, Pushkar. It's great to be back so soon. And I know it's the big day of the World Cup final, and we're getting people to listen to us. So that's a big achievement,
Let's see how many people turn up. But whom are you supporting, India or South Africa?
obviously.
South Africa?
I just hope we win the cup this time.
Yeah. We have been losing in finals. I don't know what. So is Indian team good at marketing themselves?
I think I would say that the Indian team doesn't have to market themselves because they have the largest fan base in the world of very emotionally charged people, right? And irrespective whether they win or lose, in terms of just the sheer number of people, I think they're doing all right, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, look at how BCC has gone on from 2003-4 onwards to becoming one of the largest and the richest sports bodies in the world, right? That shows the might of the Indian fan more than anything else.
Right. 1.5 billion people.
Yeah,
But
1.5 billion people with about 30-40,000 crores every year in just BCCI revenue.
right. How can a startup be like BCCI?
Well, you have to be a monopoly, right? No, I think it's a question about how you get a product or service which is so loved by your users that they can't live without it, and that is a question of how you can be this big, right? I mean, we've seen that with companies such as Dropbox, Airbnb, Zomato, Swiggy. They've just become like juggernauts because people love the service that they provide and the convenience and some X factor that they give, and they're very consistent. And that's probably resulted in their brand value going to the levels that they're at, right? I mean, if you look at Zomato's worth $20 billion. I mean, I know that both you and me are very cynical when it comes to numbers, but if you look at the numbers, they're still at about maybe sub 20 crores or not $20 million in profitability. So some of these companies have become really big, even though from a profitability or a value investing point, they're not there yet.
No, I totally agree. And especially Zomato in India's case has been one of our biggest success stories for startups, right?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, and I think they were a little behind the curve as well, if you think about it, because they started off as a food discovery restaurant sort of
Right.
platform, and Swiggy came on board probably late 2015, early 2016. If I remember 2016, I used to hear every month about two or three food apps getting funded, and Swiggy just got their operational efficiency and their UX UI and that whole package really well, and then that sort of carved the way for Zomato to kind of pivot and get into that space and do extremely well, right? I mean, I thought Paytm would do the same. Unfortunately, that's not panned out, but at least Zomato is definitely a flag bearer from a consumer tech point of view in India.
Right. I totally agree.
And we were talking about Zepto a couple of days back. In fact, yesterday on LinkedIn, if you remember, Pushkar, that's
Mhm.
again probably a company that will become very big. At least the founder has got very audacious goals. But is the market deep enough? I think only time will tell.
I'm sure the market will grow. My only concern is a lot of venture capital too early is not always a good thing because then startups burn a lot of money
Yeah,
in frivolous activities, in acquisitions that don't add any value. But only time will tell how Zepto does. I think it's a robust company, but I don't think the valuation is correct. I
sure.
think it's overvalued. We'll talk about Zomato and Zepto maybe today, like if we can give their examples. But before we start, maybe something about your experience in marketing. Why do you like GTM? So why are you fascinated with GTM? What made you get into marketing and not tech?
Sure. Sure. I mean, so maybe a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm not a native marketer. I'm like
Okay.
a learned marketer. I've worked with some really interesting and good marketers and some interesting companies. So I'm more a native BD sales guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I just realized over a period of time that, hey, the world is getting super connected. People are going to reveal their identities, especially with social media coming out in 2006, 7, 8 time frame. So marketing cannot be avoided. You just can't do sales to close business, right? So I think the power of marketing and the power of traffic and being very truthful, honest in your communication is essential for every business. So hence my interest in marketing came about very organically. That being said, I used to love SEO way back. Way back in 1997, 1998, when even before Google was around, there used to be forums where you could go and understand, okay, how do you backlink your site, all of that. So for me, it is a question of getting the right customer with the right intent in front of you for converting or actually hooking him onto what product or service that you're selling. And I think marketing is definitely a big I mean, it's got a very, very big role to play, and it's kind of interesting. Pushkar, if I were to just say this, I had this conversation a couple of days back with a friend of mine, and I said, "Listen, most of the marketing in the world are targeted at women. If you look at the whole volume of marketing that goes out there, I would say 50-60% of them are targeted at women. Of course, I think the B2B SaaS opportunity is very small
Right,
compared to
right,
the overall marketing. But if you look at luxury, if you look at FMCG, if you look at hospitality, all of that, because essentially they are pivotal when it comes to buying decisions.
Hmm.
And good marketers, interesting marketers, really understand who to go after, irrespective of whether they are just influencers or they are the people who have the purses that they can open up.
right, right. You also, I know you talked about marketing, business development, sales in our last webinar, the differences between them. But before we touch that, I just have one question to you. Like you said, 60-70% marketing is targeted towards women all over the world, not only in India.
Yeah.
Does it? I'm sure it helps a lot for marketers to understand consumer psychology, right?
Yes.
How consumer think. Someone who's just starting out like a founder, what advice would you have for him, her? How do you understand this psychology part? How to nail that?
Sure. I think fundamentally, founders are very good at building products.
Hmm.
Founders are very good at identifying gaps. Founders are very good in terms of understanding there are certain tools, products, services that address certain needs, and then there are gaps and there are white spaces, right? What I always tend to tell companies and young founders is, if you want to get a real deep conviction
Hmm.
about your product or service, then you really have to understand the founder. I mean, understand the customer.
Right,
So, right,
right,
you can't restrict yourself by just wearing the first person hat. You have to wear multiple hats, including a third person sort of a sort of a hat. And I can give you an example, Pushkar, because since I have done a lot of different businesses, and I would like to say that I'm the guy who loves to do different things, maybe not stick on to one thing for a long period of time. But I have always focused on trying to get myself a very immersive experience in whichever culture or market that I'm in, right? So I would not buy too many things, but I go to shopping malls and supermarkets and cinema theaters a lot because I kind of understand what consumers are doing. Where are they putting their money? What's on sale? What is the kind of pedagogy or medium in which brands are trying to reach out to consumers, right? And I don't think this is very restricted to just a consumer facing product or a D2C brand. I think it's important for everything. For example, if I were to sell a B2B SaaS product, I would really the one thing missing in this whole journey is the fact that today identification of customers is quite, maybe not customers, identification of prospects and the list of prospects is quite easy. You add AI to it, it becomes easier. Qualifying and putting um, qualifying and putting them into different cohorts is also not that difficult. The
We
one
just got a
missing,
comment
yeah, I
that
think,
it's not live, it's buffering. Just let me check.
sure.
I think it's back to, maybe there was some problem, but I'm seeing on my phone. Now it's buffering well. Boni, in case you can't hear us or if still buffering, just put in a comment. I think now is better. Sandeep, just to go back to, I think you were talking about understanding the customer well, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's prerequisite, right? You can't sell anything without.
absolutely. So, as I was just saying, Pushkar, so understanding the customer means understanding anything and everything about the customer and understanding the buying journey to get insights about intent, right? So, what do they do on a daily basis? How do they do their tasks? What workflows do they use? What are the ones that their company normally subscribes to? So, all of this information needs to go onto a data sheet or a research sheet
Okay.
for you to really. It's like saying that I think we do this house of sales session once in a while, and one of our friends is a top email marketer. He says that for an email, you have less than 10 seconds to get it right with your customer. So across channels, you have a limited window. How can you entice that customer by telling him, hey, listen, we understand your problem. We empathize with your problem. We know you want to go from, say, X to 5X. Let us try to help you get there. Hear us out.
Right. So this is how you start building a product, right? This is something you have to do before even you build your product, knowing what
Um,
customer.
yes, ideally, I think you're building a product. You have to get it out there to a few design references and test customers, and you kind of refine the product from there, and then you build on top of that different layers. So ideally, every step of the way, if you get feedback inputs, again, let's just step back a bit here. You need to get feedback from the most relevant people who will give you objective feedback and not biased by their experiences or their roles or the kind of companies that they work in, right? So once you have that feedback and once you have that feedback loop going on, then I think your product becomes it becomes in a state where you can get uh, customer love faster.
Okay. And Sandeep, one more thing. I think it says it's interrupting a lot, frequent buffering. Yes. Maybe there is some LinkedIn issue. Uh,
Should we just try to restart the stream, Pushkar, in that case?
we just wait for one more minute if it's still, because right now I can see it streaming. Otherwise, we'll just restart.
Sure.
Yes. Parvesh says my Wi-Fi is quite good, it's still buffering. I don't know. I think there's some problem with LinkedIn. Maybe we'll just, should we restart then? Or maybe just we continue for a minute or two. If it's still buffering, we'll restart.
Yeah. And yeah, if you can't hear us and if it's buffering, please drop a note so that then we can restart, right?
Right. Or in case it's still like you're not able to hear anything, we are just recording it on YouTube. So we can pass you on the link also
Yeah.
in case you miss some parts of it. Coming back to
Great.
the topic, Sandeep, today's topic is top or most effective GTM strategies. I just want to touch upon one point. You said in today's world, because of internet and AI, it's easy to find your customers, right?
Prospects. Yeah, it's
Prospects,
easy
all
to
right.
find customers as well, but it starts with the prospect. Yeah.
So what's the difference between a prospect and a customer in layman's term?
A prospect is somebody that you identify from between the top of the funnel to the middle of the funnel. You might put a whole lot of people at the top of the funnel, exposing themselves to the product or service. And then as you go down the funnel, and you're able to close a prospect, then that prospect becomes a customer.
Okay. So not all prospects become customers, right? Of course not.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there is a drop off along the way, and tools like HubSpot and Marketo and a lot of these platforms allow you to go back, segment, reach out to these different people who have dropped off and who can potentially be in the buying journey much later, or can become evangelists at a later point in time.
Right. And coming back to the GTM again, are prospects a critical component of GTM? Like, how would you? We talked about this in the last webinar also, but maybe 2 3 minutes on. What are the core ethos of GTM?
Sure, sure. And yeah, so I think first and foremost, GTM is applicable whether it is in one particular market, which is your home market, or could be cross-border, right? You're expanding
Mhm.
internationally. So there are fundamentally four important things of pulling off a very good GTM. Now, these four things are subject to certain types of companies, and some companies you might do one part later or one part is non-existent, etc., etc. But if I were to just stack it up, the four important parts of GTM are: first is marketing. So, how do you get your prospects, your channel partners aware of your product or service? So, that's
Mhm.
fundamentally very important. And today, the advantage is you could be sitting out of India and marketing something in Finland. It takes very little, right?
Mhm.
Or Nicaragua for that matter. So, that's the first part. The second part of it is essentially sales, which is essentially okay, how do you close deals? Now, these deals could be one is to one deals, or it could be one is to many deals. Again, these intricacies for sales and how to close sales are dependent on the type of companies that you're looking at. For enterprise, the sales motion and the sales velocity will be fundamentally very different to somebody who's selling into a mid market, maybe a $10,000 to $30,000 sort of an ACV sort of a customer, right? Like for example, somebody who's selling it mid market, there might be a sales motion which will involve inside sales, identifying the customer, booking a meeting, then the salesperson getting on the call, qualifying, additional demo, etc., information given, pricing, and then the sale getting booked. So that sales motion is going to be there if you are a company which is either in D2C or in mid market. And again, fundamentally, mid market is different between a market such as India or in the US. The US, you would
Mhm.
have an upper mid market, which is companies which are like 300, $400 million to $1 billion in revenue. Enterprise is more than a billion. Whereas in India, you have got the SME, you have the micro entrepreneurs, the MSME sort of a categorization, right? And obviously enterprise. So that's the sales part of it. The third part of it is, like I said, interestingly, it is business development. How do you add value? Who do you collaborate with so that there is an impact in terms of tangible impact in terms of revenue? There is an impact in terms of your brand, trust, reputation in the market, right? For example, you could be selling. Let's say you're selling a HR tech solution. You're selling a HR tech solution and you're in the Middle East, right?
Mhm.
So maybe doing a collaboration with somebody who's doing HR and leadership trainings for the last 20 years, them understanding your workflow is validation that hey, you have built something which is relevant to their audience, which means that they would rubber stamp it. They can pass it on to their audience. They could sort of become a referral partner, affiliate partner, and you also get to do good webinars or good in-person events with somebody who's credible in that particular market, right? So that's just one example I can give you. So you could do a lot of business development sort of activities. In D2C, it might be that you collaborate with a different product, you give a sachet away. I mean, it might be not possible to do it in a Singapore or Europe, etc. But if you're building a D2C product in India, say in Ayurveda or say something which is natural, in something natural or wellness, can you go to Dubai? Can you find a distributor to do your product, but at the same time try to combine it or bundle it with some other product where the customer is anyway buying that category and that product is actually adding value, right? So
Got it.
that's an
Just
example.
one question,
So
because of course we understood what sales is. Now you said, and let's take an example of D2C brand because it's easier to understand. You said giving out free samples can be a part of business development, right?
yeah,
But how is that different from marketing then?
so it's kind of free samples is more marketing for
Hmm.
sure. BizDev is actually how do you unlock a deal where you figure out how do you stitch yourself with another brand where the
Hmm.
first sample might be free, but you will get a subscription revenue of that customer where that brand will take certain piece of the pie and you get revenue. So BizDev for me is actually structuring that particular deal. Like for example, Pushka, think about everybody's talking about sustainability, and sustainability is the new wave. Imagine you go to a large chain like a Starbucks or somebody else saying
Hmm.
that, hey, listen, we've got something that we make out of fiber and jute, and that's going to probably cost you like 20 cents or 15 cents. That's a lot for Starbucks, but maybe Starbucks is the wrong example, but 10, 15 cents more, but we will subsidize the first 100,000 cups because
Hmm.
for you it is marginal cost of production, but you are getting your brand product out there with a really large chain where there is interaction with the right customer audience and all the other chains looking at you. So, hey, all of a sudden I've done a PR with Starbucks on sustainability.
Hmm.
Starbucks feels good. I get brand visibility, but this
Hmm.
BD deal has ensured that you could sell the next 20 million cups.
Right. So marketing, sales, business development. Is
Yeah.
branding a part of BD or does it come under sales? Oh, sorry, marketing.
Branding would come under marketing because
Okay.
that's like the fundamental pillar that you would look at. So the brand vision document, branding, positioning, these are all elements that come under marketing, which is actually at the very nebulous of a business or a startup, right? So you're doing something great. How do you brand yourself? How do you position yourself? And how do you write a brand vision document? Unfortunately, what happens is Pushkar, B2B companies tend to differ this
Okay.
a lot later, right? Because they feel that creating a brand and the value that you get out of creating a brand becomes obvious in the mid to long term compared to a D2C company or an FMCG company or a consumer tech company,
Hmm.
right? Well, I can think of a couple of examples of people who've played this very, very differently. If you look at Infosys, and you should go and look at the market capitalization of Infosys with the other IT services companies in the world, I mean, maybe not India as well as in the world, Infosys and Accenture consistently have a higher brand equity because
Okay.
Infosys went back into when they were building Infosys back in the late 80s and early 90s, they invested a lot of money into brand that they have to create a unique proposition, right? Take a look at Zoho, for instance. Zoho Corp got, Zoho, they were running a company called AdventNet, and AdventNet got shifted to Zoho Corp, I think in 2003, 2004, but they actually spent a lot of money in that whole Zoho. What does Zoho do? Zoho is the business OS, etc., etc. And as you can imagine, there are 20,000 plus players in the CRM space, and
Wow.
that branding has actually ensured that they have a certain amount of brand equity and differentiation. HubSpot has done the same thing. If you look at it, right, they coined the term inbound, whereas
Okay.
inbound was always there, but they just made it cool. So consistently, I think a lot of companies in the B2B space are picking up on the fact that they need to brand themselves, they need to differentiate themselves. Because unfortunately, what has happened in the last 5 7 years, Pushkar, is with AWS and all the tools, all of those being available, the cost of building a SaaS company has come down drastically,
Right, right.
which means that the competition is immense in any category that you're looking at. There are probably three companies in Koramangala and five companies in HSR. And Gurgaon is not known for so many SaaS companies, but so there are a lot of people building. So one of the ways that you can really, really differentiate yourself is have a great brand, have a great value proposition, and just take that and put it out there and constantly refine it based on what you hear from customers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, got it. A lot. So we have marketing. Branding is a sub part of marketing. Then you go to sales, of course, business development, which goes in tandem. What
Yeah.
else? Anything else in GTM? Any other core pillar?
So I think another thing which is very important in GTM, I mean, some people club it with marketing. I choose to keep it separate. Is
Mhm.
the whole PR aspect of it, right? So there
Okay.
is the event part of it. The event part of it can come in marketing, but I look at PR is very important based on certain types of companies that you expand into different parts of the world, right? And PR is about PR could be, it doesn't have to be big, right? For example, if you're a SaaS company and you go into the US, but you have got certain very reputed companies from India who are using it. There could be some MNC, competency centers who are using it, etc., etc.
Mhm.
Can you do something like a very power packed webinar or a thought leadership, all of that, because that will actually help you build trust. So PR is a very tactical move that companies have to use. No, so a lot of companies use PR as just another channel for marketing. I actually choose to step back and think that there's no point in having a press release every week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, getting focused on economic times. You have to use it as a very tactical lightning rod. So when you go into a new market, I think it is super important for you to figure out what are the one or two or three things, and these levers used over a period of time will get your marketing to be that PR activities will increase your marketing extrapolation, as
Mhm.
well as you get more favorable sales opportunities.
Okay. And would you say the number one goal of a PR campaign is to build trust, or is it something else?
I think um, I think it's a question of where you are in the process as well, right? So there, I would say that PR essentially can be used for a couple of things. One is to build trust.
Mhm.
Second is for conversions. Third is for, so trust, credibility for me go hand in hand, because
Right, right,
sometimes you just need that. Trust is one thing, because say a lot of companies, a lot of founders put logos on their decks and on their sites because that builds trust.
right.
PR activity should build trust, credibility. In some cases it's just conversion driven. So you're focused on, like, for example, the earlier example I told you, HR tech company going to the Middle East. Let's say you do a 30, 35 member wine and dine thing, but you ensure that you get the 30 or 35 potential customers in that segment of companies into that meeting or into that event. And you bring one or two really powerful people who are either your customers or people that these guys look up to from
Okay,
a PR influence point of view.
got it.
Then that allows your sales teams to be there, network, and push prospects down the conversion funnel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, a lot. Is this an activity? Do you do it first when you enter a new market? For example, let's talk about top GTM strategies. Uh, and maybe we can take an example of a consumer company or not a large corporate, maybe like a
Yeah.
small corporate consumer company, mid market. I'm entering a new market. What is the number one thing I should do? Most effective strategy.
So I think, like we talked about, founders having to understand the customer very
Mhm.
deeply. before you step into a market, apart from if you are a consumer tech company, then you're in the market very easy. People, you just need to get the app provisioned and people can download it. Uh,
Mhm.
you need to understand the dynamics of the market, right? Because your right to win. What is your right to win in that particular market? Who are the people who are already entrenched in that particular market? Who are the key buyers that you need to figure out how to unlock? So these are some of the basic essential aspects that I would think about before I do like a GTM strategy, uh, GTM strategy into a particular market, right?
Okay.
So understand the market and why have you chosen that particular market? What are the dynamics in that particular market? What is the dynamics as in, I mean, the pricing, the other products which are there, competition, what is the buying cycle, etc., all of that. Then you have to obviously think about, okay, what are the resources that I have to deploy into this particular market? Because it doesn't mean that I've raised a million, 2 million, 3 million, and I'm going to spend maybe 80% of that in one particular market. It doesn't make sense, right?
Right, right,
So all of those things are things that you need to consider and figure out, maybe not 100% the answers, but kind of say that, hey, these are my hypotheses, these are the directions that I'm thinking of, this is where I might fall flat, which means I need to have a backup plan,
right.
if that makes sense.
And in my opinion, you can never figure out 100%, right? It's
You
impossible.
can't. You can't. I think, Pushkar, we are entrepreneurs. We operate in that gray zone because we are able to make sense of 60%, 70% data, right? If people
Right.
need 100% data, then I think a lot more people would be entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Like one of my friends used to say, it's like we navigate the oblivion.
Yeah, maybe. There's always unknown, right? You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
But you also talked about these three, four questions every founder or entrepreneur should ask himself, herself before venturing into a new market. In your experience, do most founders do it? And if not, where do they go wrong?
Um, that's a very, very good question, actually. He's just woken me up on a Saturday evening. But I think, see, I've seen the trend in the last maybe 4 to 6 years that
Mhm.
everybody jumps on the US bandwagon. And the US bandwagon is great because you have the people who are going to be the most risky and take bets and buy products, right? So I think this, at some point in time, there is a little bit of a group think that's happening in the Indian ecosystem, that you have to sell US, you have to sell US GTM. And I will answer the other parts of your question, because for every company that you're talking US GTM, there is an example of uh, so many guys who've gone to Southeast Asia, who
Mhm.
built in India, who built in the West, actually achieved unit economics, understood out of their product suite which will make sense, which will not make sense, what is the extent of their sales motion before they gone to the US, for instance, or Europe, right? I think one of the biggest examples I can think of is this unicorn. Oh, I forgot the name. It's a HR tech unicorn funded by India. Um, I was a Darwin Box. Darwin
Okay.
Box went, conquered all of Southeast Asia, including Singapore, Vietnam, etc., etc. When they finally raised money to go to the US, they were at a unicorn valuation,
Wow. That
right?
doesn't often happen, right?
That doesn't often happen, but sometimes it's about understanding, like for example, friend of mine runs a company called Rocket DM, which is like they do video at scale. You can personalize video at scale for different brands and other things. He initially started off as a B2C creator sort of a play, and the platform is very, very, very good. I have a few friends who are investors there as well, and then he started selling into the urban company, the Zomatos, the all those kind of people. So he got certain amount of traction. He was almost at about 300 500k of ARR.
Mhm.
Then he realized, hey, listen, I think my sweet spot is actually to go to the US and sell to only this particular target audience. And today he's reached, from about 2.5 years back, he's gone from 500k ARR to about 3 million plus in
Wow.
ARR, right? So because he kind of got the insights that, hey, I have all of these customers, it's given me this platform. I know what my platform can do for them. I also understand the sales motion it takes to get there. So now let me just go and do this for certain brands in the US. And then the founder, one of the co-founders, the main founder, shifted to the US, and he's been running the business. He's hired sales guys. I go on LinkedIn, I see him winning one deal after the other. And these are not small deals. These are like 30k to 200k sort of deals, right? So this sort of enterprise, but they kind of realize this much earlier. So that's one. So groupthink. Please try to avoid groupthink as a founder, right? Because unfortunately, playbooks are changing every couple of years.
Right,
So there's
right.
no point in having a groupthink. Uh, what do founders not do? Um, I think founders probably sometimes lack that framework or process of what are those dots that they need to connect in that particular market. How do they reverse engineer those set of dots and figure out if there are any paths to kind of hack growth there,
Any
right?
advice how first-time founders can do that? Connecting, because you mentioned 4 or 5 things while entering a new market. Now, how can first-time founders connect those dots? It's not easy. I can't think of anything.
Sure. First time founders can, when you look at a new market, I think you should talk to as many people as possible who
Mhm.
have done that before. Number one. Number two is talk to as many prospects or your existing customers who are part of your goodwill, right? So, because they might have some ideas, some input. So, talk to your 360-degree ecosystem, leverage on LinkedIn and other referral contacts that
Mhm.
you can get. But there's something that you have to beware of. I think we're all very apt at giving a lot of gyan, right? I mean, me included. I mean, I think we're all victims of that, and we do that all the time. I mean, right? So you need to take everything with a pinch of salt, because your playbook is your own playbook. So
Okay.
if you can figure out a path, and that's the beauty of LinkedIn as well, right? I mean, you if you can craft messaging correctly and reach the right audience or person with a genuine need that you need to pick their brain and spend 15-20 minutes of their time, most people, unless they are air traffic controllers, would have the time for you,
Right,
or
right. I
doctors or air traffic controllers. But so there is a way to do that, and that also needs to be in a process. So, for example, if you're a founder that you want to expand into Singapore, if you want a founder that wants to expand into the East Coast or West Coast, spend 15, 30, 40 minutes of your day every day to look at contacts. Who do
Mhm.
I need to message? How do I need to optimize my message to speak to those people? Number one. Number two, who do I know? And today's, unfortunately, that's the other problem, is that a lot of people have a lot of contacts on LinkedIn, but they're not very active with most of their contacts. They don't
Right,
know a lot of
right.
their contacts. So that level of 1 degree connection, like you and me connected and we had a phone conversation,
Right,
even
right.
though you got a lot of contacts. So that building trust, building relationships. So leverage on the people that you are in touch with, who you know has an in there, right? And that's important. So direct outreach, direct ins, read up about the market as well, because I mean, for example, a lot of information is there, right? If I'm selling into mid market in the US or if I'm selling mid market into Germany, there's enough and more information on G2 Crowd or Capterra in any category that you want.
Right, right,
So then you go and you say, hey, these customers of this product which competes with me or is an alliance business potential partnership with me, this is what these guys say. Then I would message the founder saying that, hey, listen, great work that you're doing. I saw your G2 profile. Customers are saying this, this, this. How did you manage that in 2 years of time, 3 years of time? In between, I'm a founder from India, I'm doing this.
right.
So sometimes it takes a lot of time, and that's why we had this conversation about AI. Not all of it can be done with AI as well, Pushkar, right? So there is some amount of research digging that you need to do.
Now, do you think AI is hype or there is
No, no,
some
I
real
don't think no,
substance?
no, I don't think AI is hype, but what I'm just trying to say is that it's not going to work. Not all use cases are going to work
Right.
without a human in the loop.
So people are hyping it up.
Well, Nvidia has crashed in the last 5 6 days, but no, no.
Okay,
See, I think AI is fundamentally going to change a lot of things, and it's already changed a lot of things
of
for
course.
sure,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm not being a naysayer saying that AI is bullshit and all of that kind of stuff, but I'm saying that one of the fundamental reasons where I believe my skills are super important
Hmm.
is that I have empathy for the person across me. I'm able to craft a message that will get his attention. And as a founder, as a sales guy, as a BD guy, you need to do that. The best AI in the world is not going to do that for you.
Right, right.
I think
It
we're
will
still a
always
couple
be
of years away from that.
it will always be generic, right? All these messages that AI write, anyone can see it and know like, hey, it's AI written. There is
Yeah.
no personal touch.
Yeah, so even 2 years back, Pushkar, when we were doing a lot of marketing assignments with certain clients,
Hmm.
there was content which was generated by AI, I think 3.5 ChatGPT, and content which is generated and put on the website. We all knew at that particular point in time. At some point in time, Google is not a dumb idiot. They're going to be able to scan shit and say this is generated by ChatGPT. This is not generated by ChatGPT, right? So people actually masked it and said that, hey, in case there is a switch or if the algorithm changes, we can take down this content in one shot. So I'm just trying to say, use the tools, enable yourself with the tools to shrink the workflow, but don't take the humanness and the humanity out of it.
Right,
Because
right.
you buy as a human, right? Pushkar, if I want to
Exactly.
sell something to you, like for example, if I want to sell you a house in Kerala or you sell me a house in Patna, it's obviously going to be more challenging for you. But
100 times more challenging.
yeah, but you would need to have a bond, a trust,
Right, right.
etc. Right? That's not going to go away.
I totally agree. Especially in any large ticket sale, you need to have a strong relationship, right? Otherwise,
$20,000, I would say that $20,000 and above. So anything which is like $1,000 a month, $12,000, you can push it to $20,000. Anything $20,000 and above, there has to be the human in the loop or the humans in the loop. I mean, if you look at a lot of these SaaS companies today, you have AE, SDR, BDR, all of that. And very interestingly, my friend Arjun had written a post about 2 3 days back. He said, SaaS companies today, what 3 years back, 2.5 years back was 30% quota carrying employees
mhm.
has reduced to 10% quota carrying employees. So 10% of the employees are generating the same or more revenue in the
Wow.
business. But that being said, the average revenue per employee is probably gone down, right? Because of the funding cycles and all of this money that's been there, and then there's hype cycles. There's just so much of money being flushed out, and so many companies out there. So your average closure and the competition for closure in SaaS has become incredibly tougher. The renewal rates are still up there, but the new SaaS deal percentages have come down.
Right, right, yeah. And that's a trend all over the world, not only in India, right?
Yeah, it's Absolutely. I mean, the data that I looked at was for 35,000 odd companies in the US,
Hmm.
and it was from Profitwell. That was mostly in the US, but it's same across the world.
Yeah, I agree. It's same in India. Maybe we can take two questions. We already at like 4:45. Do you have time?
Sure.
Five minutes, and very relevant to what we talked about. I'll just put it over there. Can you say it? There's a difference between building a network and real relationships. Like a lot of people have huge network, but how can you really tap into it?
Sure.
Good question, I would say. I
It's a
don't know how
great
to answer
question.
it.
It's a great question.
I don't know how to answer it, but
So, so it's it's see, real relationships are like compound interest. It's though it's not just money compounding over time, but real relationships are, you give some, you get some, you give some, you give some. You have that predictability of how you interact with that person, and that increases over a period of time, right? um, that is for me a no-brainer over any network, right? I mean, I could have a zillion connections, but if I know only 0.01% or 0.0001% of that zillion connections, the remaining portion of those connections are actually useless. Um, so if you look at in my case, I think I was the 850,000th LinkedIn user way back in 2004.
okay.
And that was because I was introduced by a friend in Silicon Valley who was living in Japan, all of that kind of stuff. I kind of understood the power of LinkedIn very early. Uh, until about 3 4 years back,
Hmm.
um, based on my network today, my network probably 50% of the network that I have today, I would know the person. I would have interacted with the person. I've been referenced through somewhere, or I'm alumni with somebody, right? Um, a lot of people, what happens is they just go on this whole it's like collecting fridge magnets when you travel all those places in the world, and you want to stick it in your fridge because everybody will come and say, hey, you got all these magnets, you've been to all these places, right? So don't think about relationships as fridge magnets. Relationships are deep, it requires a lot of time. It is always adding value and giving, that's most important, because then at some point in time when you need something, there are five people ready to help you. um, Collecting network connections on LinkedIn is great, but how are you going to add value to them? Is it through your content? Is it through something else that you do, etc., etc.? I think that is very, very important. So, actually, this is a segue into one of the conversations that, in fact, the question that Pushkar asked. What I don't see founders doing enough of is building real relationships, and not just at the point of GTM, building real relationships and actually following up. So I have a problem in this ecosystem. I lived in Japan, I lived in Singapore. I mean, I have a problem because when I say something, I try to follow up or I try to keep in touch. But a
Hmm.
lot of founders show me a business plan, show me a deck, I give maybe a look through, give some points, and then they vanish, which is fine. Everybody has this thing. But I would say that following up also indicates your professional decorum more than anything else.
Right, right. 100% with you on this. Do you think it happens more in India or is it prevalent also in Japan, Singapore? Is it an Indian problem?
See, I think it happens. I think it happens all over, especially when you're talking about a founder category. The people are, I mean, I can understand. People are hustling. People need to figure out how to keep the money in the bank safe or how to earn their buck for the next month to feed their team. I would assume that Japan is not a very entrepreneurial ecosystem per se, but generally the rule, the business rule, and the society is so ingrained to certain values that if somebody says that, hey, I'll come back to you in 2 weeks, he'll come back to me in 2 weeks, even if he doesn't have an update. Singapore, it's mix and match because Singapore is again an amalgamation of different cultures per se,
Right,
right?
right.
Uh, India, we are going through this sudden surge in the last 5 6 years of people building companies. It's like it's very cool. No, it's like earlier you used to go back to your parents and say, "I'm studying for the IIT, JEE, or something like that." Now it's very cool to say that I'm doing a startup. So that culture has brought in like 50, 70, 80,000 startups, but those small little things might be intangibles that will actually help you in the longer period in time.
Right, right. I agree. I think maybe it will change with time as founders become more mature.
Yep. And we have more quality founders advising the other founders as well.
Right. Fingers crossed. One final technical question because we talked a lot about prospects and someone asked an interesting question. Again, I don't
Yep.
know how to answer it well, but who all to include in prospects?
Sure. Sure. Again, see, I think fundamentally when you're building a product, you would have a semblance of who is your ideal customer profile.
Hmm.
And your ideal customer profile would have which company, which set of companies, what are the sizes of the companies, what are the industries these companies lie in, and the sort of decision maker or makers who you would want to approach in these companies. So, in my prospect list, I would obviously start off with uh, a map of this country, uh, whether I look at attraction or a Bloomberg or whatever, come up with X number of companies. Again, it is very important for you to not bite off more than what you can chew at the early part of GTM. So if you restrict yourself to 50 accounts, 100 accounts, that will be great. Look at those companies in those particular industries. Then in those companies, find the relevant decision makers through LinkedIn or Rocket Reach or Apollo, etc.
Hmm.
Ideally have more than one prospect per company. If you've got multiple stakeholders, include multiple stakeholders, which will obviously make your effort more. But ideally have two prospects per company. That will be my prospect list. Additionally, there could be certain people who might be able to help influence you through prospects or who can help you. Like, for example, if it is a mid market company, I think, remember we talked about the architect example, Pushkar, I think last time. If
Right,
I were to sell into architects say, in Singapore, there might be a chartered accountant or a chartered accountant council who might know a lot of architects. So
right,
there could be a related set of people in a different tab in the prospect list who are potential partners or affiliates, and they will have a different cadence, etc., etc. But hey, you crack a prospect in the direct list or a prospect in the indirect list, it's still a win in my book.
right, right. Because the indirect list will help you get more prospects slash customers, right? That's
And
how
the
it works.
indirect list might get you meetings and might get somebody that you will get in touch with them there to actually talk to one of your direct prospects. Hey, have you heard
I
about this company?
I agree. And in my opinion, a lot of founders miss on that. If they think this person is not my direct customer or consumer, they don't spend any time with him, right? People are very transaction focused, which
Yeah.
is maybe not a great thing, great way to build a large business.
Yeah. So in GTM, I'm very very certain that if you're in the mid market space, enterprise is a different kettle of fish. But if you're in the enterprise space, I mean, sorry, if you're in the mid market space and not the enterprise space, or any GTM activity that really requires you to be on the ground, spend 2 3 weeks in the market. Don't put the pressure of just sales or closure of deals on your head. But before you spend that 2 3 weeks in the market, spend the preceding fortnight with your team to, like I said, what are the dots that I need to achieve here? How do I need to look at it? Look at it from different perspectives so that when you're in that market for 2 3 weeks in the first trip, you sort of have semblance of what you need to look at and what hypothesis will you get formulated from that market, because it's much better doing that rather than spending a year in the market going through 100 200k and then realizing, Abhi yaar, why the hell did I go here in the first place?
Right, right. I I also think it's honestly not easy not having sales pressure, especially if you have raised capital, because there's always that unfortunate pressure to grow. But as a founder, you have to manage that. That's the
No, no,
thing.
I'm not saying. So I'm not saying, Pushkar, that you should not have sales pressure. You've raised capital, which means that you're doing some things right.
Right,
But
right.
just give yourself a little bit of breathing room, saying that, hey, there are certain things that I want to test out quickly, and I've
Before
done a
start
certain
selling.
amount of background homework.
Right, right. You don't have to start selling on day zero. We can
Yes,
start on
absolutely.
day 15. Right. I think we have again overshot the time. Any final thoughts on JTM? Any one takeaway that you would have it for everyone listening? This is a must. They must do it. Or there's nothing like that.
uh, See, I think first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time out and listening to me and Pushkar talk.
On a
The
World Cup
reason,
day.
yeah, on a World Cup day, and the reason that we've done this and this is the second episode is the fact that we feel that as much of value and knowledge we can pass on to the ecosystem, I think that will ensure that companies get built and founders get smarter, right? So that's one. GTM is not that difficult. But if you can come up with a reasonable plan and get one or two people to vet out that plan, could be peers, could be other people, could be advisors, etc., then I think it is a lot easier to do. Um, and also the other thing as I said is US is definitely a tough market, but
Mhm.
I think you can figure out how to create and carve a niche, because US is definitely the early adopter in anything software, anything SaaS, etc.
Right, right.
Right?
They're also
It's
the
not
biggest
difficult.
market.
Pushkar, the message that I want to leave is it's not, it's, I mean, maybe I'm biased with 20 plus years of experience, but uh, it's definitely not difficult. It's doable.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Awesome then. I think we are almost at 5. Thank you, Sandeep. Maybe we'll
Thank you,
try to do
Pushkar.
one more in 2 weeks of time.
Yep. Thank you for taking the time out, Pushkar, and organizing this.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it.
I have to get you to, I have to ask you a lot of questions as well at some
Right,
point.
right. Yeah, maybe
Sure.
we can do it next time.
Yeah.
Let's hope India wins today.
Yep. Yep. All the best. Thank you,
All
everybody.
right, guys.
Have a
Thanks for
nice
tuning
evening. Bye
in.
bye. Thank you.
Bye.